Aurangzeb was the last of the powerful Mughal rulers. He established control over a very large part of territory that is known as India. After his death in 1707, many Mughal governors and subedars and big zamindars began asserting their authority and establishing regional kingdoms. As powerful regional kingdoms emerged in various parts of India, Delhi could no longer function as an effective center. By the second half of the 18th century, however, a new power was emerging on the political horizon, the British. Do we know that the British originally came as a small trading company and were reluctant to acquire territories? How then they become the masters of a vast empire? In this chapter, you will see how all this came about. Before coming to the chapter, we should know about the background of the Britishers and the Mughals. I just realized that I forgot to put the background. Just give me a second. Starting with the East India Company. In 1600, the East India Company acquired a charter from the ruler of England, Queen Elizabeth I, granting it the sole right to trade with the East. This meant that no other trading group in England could compete with the East India Company. With this charter, the company could venture across the oceans looking for new lands from which it could buy goods at cheap prices and carry them back to Europe to sell at higher prices. The company did not have to fear competition from other English trading companies. Mercantile trading companies in those days made profit primarily by excluding competition so that they could buy cheap and sell higher. The Royal Charter, however, could not prevent other European powers from entering the eastern markets. By the time the first English ships sailed down the west coast of Africa, round the Cape of Good Hope, and crossed the Indian Ocean, however, the Portuguese had already established their presence in the western coast of India and had their base in Goa. In fact, it was Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese explorer, who had discovered the sea route to India in 1498. It was early 17th century. The Dutch too were exploring the possibilities of trade in the Indian Ocean. Soon the French traders arrived on the scene. It was like that French wouldn't let anyone do something on their own. They would always come between the matter, generally not speaking, towards the French. The problem was that all the companies were interested in buying the same things. The fine qualities of cotton and silk produced in India had a big market in Europe. Pepper cloves, cardamom and cinnamon too were in great demand. Competition against the European companies' inevitability pushed up the price at which these goods could be purchased, and this reduced the profits that could be earned. The only way the trading companies could flourish was by eliminating rival competitors. The urge to secure markets therefore led to fierce battles between the trading companies. Through the 17th and 18th centuries, they regularly sank each other's ship, blocked harded routes, and prevented rival ships from moving with supplies. supplies of goods. Trade was carried on with arms and trading posts were protected through fortification. This effort to fortify settlements and carry on profitable trade also led to intense conflict between the local rulers. The company therefore found it difficult to separate trade from politics. Let's see how it happened. The first English factory was set up on the banks of river Hugli in 1651. This was the base from which the company traders, known at that time as factors, operated. The factory had a warehouse where goods for export were stored and it had offices where company officials sat. As trade expanded, the company pursued merchants and traders to come and settle near the factory. By 1696, it began building a fort around the settlement. 2 years later, it bribed Mughal officials into giving the company zamindari rights over 3 villages. One of these was Kolkata. Okay, so it also pursued the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb to issue a farman granting the East India Company or the company the right to trade duty free. The company tried continuously to press for more concessions and manipulate existing privileges. Aurangzeb's farman, for instance, had granted only the company the right to trade duty free, but the officials of the company who were carrying on private trade on the side were expected to pay duty. This they refused to pay, causing an enormous loss of the revenue of Bengal. How could Murshid Quli Khan, the Nawab of Bengal at the time, not protest? Through the early 18th century, the conflict between the company and the Nawabs of Bengal intensified after the death of Aurangzeb. The Bengal Nawabs asserted their power and autonomy as other regional powers were doing at that time. Murshid Quli Khan was followed by Alivardi Khan and then Siraj Ud-Dawla as the Nawab of Bengal. Each one of them was a strong ruler. They refused to grant the company concession, demanded large tributes for the company's right to trade, denied it any right to make coins, and stopped it from extending its fortifications. Accusing the companies of this, they claimed that the company was depriving the Bengal government of huge amount of revenue and undermining the authority of Nawab. It was refusing to pay taxes, writing disrespectful letters and trying to humiliate the Nawab and its officials. The company on its part declared that the unjust demands of the local officials during the trade of the company and the trade could flourish only if the duties were removed. It was also convinced to expand trade. It had enlarged its settlement by villages and rebuilt its forts. The conflicts led to confrontation really culminated in the famous Battle of Plassey. When Alivardi Khan died in 1756, Siraj Ud-Dawla became the Nawab of Bengal. The company was worried about the power and keen on a puppet ruler who would willingly give trade concessions and other privileges. They tried to, without success, to have one of Siraj Ud-Dawla's rivals become the Nawab and infuriated Siraj Ud-Dawla the company to stop meddling in political affairs of its domination, stop fortification and pay the revenues. After negotiation failed, the Nawab marched with 30,000 soldiers to the English factory as Kasir captured the company officials, locked the warehouse, disarmed the Englishmen and blockaded English trade, then marched to Calcutta and established control over the fort there. On hearing the news of the fall of Kolkata, company officials in Madras sent forces under the command of Lord Clive, reinforced by naval fleets. prolonged negotiation with the Nawab followed. Finally, in 1757, Robert Clive led the company's army against Siraj-ud-Dowlah at Plassey. One of the main reasons for the defeat of Nawab was the forces led by Major Jafar, one of Siraj-ud-Dowlah's commanders. Never fought the battle. Clive had managed to secure his Silk Road by promising to make him Nawab after crushing Siraj-ud-Dowlah. The Battle of Plassey became famous because it was the first major victory the company won in India. After the defeat at Plassey, Siraj-ud-Dowlah was assassinated and Mir Jafar made the Nawab. The company was still unwilling to take over the responsibility of administration. Its prime objective was expansion of trade. If this could be done without conquest through the help of local rulers who were willing to grant privileges, then territories need not to be taken over directly. Soon the company discovered that this was rather difficult, for even the puppet Nawabs were not always as helpful as company wanted them to be. After all, they had to maintain a basic appearance of dignity and sovereignty if they wanted respect from their subjects. What could the company do when Mir Jafar protested? The company deposed him and installed Mir Qasim in his place. When Mir Qasim complained, he in turn was defeated in a battle fought at Buxar, driven out of Bengal, and Mir Jafar was reinstalled. The Nawab had to pay 5 lakh rupees every month, but the company wanted more money to finance its wars and meet the demands of trade and its other expenses. It wanted more territories and more revenue. By the time Mir Jafar died in 1765, the mood of the company had changed. They have failed to work with puppet Nawabs. Clive declared, "We must indeed to become Nawabs ourselves." Finally, in 1765, the Mughal emperor appointed the company as the Diwan of the provinces of Bengal. The Diwani allowed the company to use the vast revenue resources of Bengal. This solved a major problem that the company had earlier faced. From the early 18th century, its trade with India had expanded, but it had to buy most of the goods in India with gold and silver imported from the Britain. This was because at that time Britain had no goods to sell in India. The outflow of gold from Britain slowed after the Battle of Plassey and entirely stopped after the assumption of Diwan. Now revenues from India could fund companies' expenses. These revenues could be used to purchase cotton and silk textiles in India, maintain company troops, and meet the cost of building the company fort and offices at Calcutta. What did it mean to be Nawabs? It meant, of course, that the company acquired more power and authority, but it also meant something else. Each company servant began to have to vision of living like Nawabs. After the Battle of Plassey, the actual Nawabs of the Bengals were forced to give land and vast sums of money as personal gift to the company officials. Robert Clive himself amassed a fortune in India. He had come to Madras, now Chennai, from England in 1743 at the age of 40. When in 1767 he left India, his Indian fortune was worth 440 £4,01,102. Interestingly, when he was appointed government of Bengal in 1764, he was asked to remove corruption in the company's administrator, but it was himself cross-examined in 1772 by the British Parliament, which was suspicious of him, where, although he was acquitted, he committed suicide in 1774. Did you guys know that actually they were suspicious because the money occupied by Robert Clive was even more than the Queen of England at that time. So wouldn't it be suspicious? At that time, the Queen of England had around £360,000 and Robert Clive had an amazing handsome amount of money of £4,01,102. So do you think wouldn't they cross-examine? As you guys know, Bengal was too bigger than the real Britain, but it's too little bit suspicious. However, not all company officials succeeded in making money like Clive. Many died an early death in India due to disease and war, and it would not be right to regard all of them as corrupt as dishonest. Many of them came from humble backgrounds, and their uppermost desire was to earn enough in India, return to Britain, and led a comfortable life. Those who managed to return with wealth and led flashy life and flaunted their riches, they were called Nababs, or in British language we can call it Naboobs, anglicized version of the Indian verb Nawabs, as they don't know how to speak the word Nawab. They were often seen as upstarts and social climbers in the British society and were ridiculed or made fun of in plays and cartoons. If we analyze the process of annexation of Indian state by the East India Company from 1757 to 1857, certain key aspects emerge. The company rarely launched a direct military attack on an unknown territory. Instead, it used a variety of political, economic, and diplomatic methods to extend its influence before annexing an Indian kingdom. After the Battle of Buxar, between that Mir Qasim in 1764, the company appointed residents in Indian states. They were political or commercial agents, and their job was to serve food and further the interest of the company. Though the residents of the company officials began interfering in the internal affairs of the Indian state, they tried to decide who was to be successor to the throne and who was to be appointed in the administrative post. Sometimes the company forced the Indian states into a subsidiary alliance. According to the terms of this alliance, Indian rulers were not allowed to have their independent armed forces. They were to be protected by the company's army. But the thing here is that they had to pay for the subsidiary forces that the company was supposed to maintain for the purpose of this protection. If the Indian ruler failed to make the payment, then the part of the territory was taken away as penalty. For example, Richard Wellesley was a government general in 1798 to 1805. The Nawab of Awadh was forced to give over half of his territory to the company in 1807 as he failed to pay for the subsidiary force. Hyderabad was also forced to cede territories on similar grounds. Let's talk about an Indian legend, Tipu Sultan, or we can say the Tiger of Mysore. The company restored to direct military confrontation when it saw the threat to political or economic interest. This can be illustrated with the case of the southern Indian state of Mysore. Mysore has grown in strength under the leadership of powerful rulers like Hyder Ali and his famous son Tipu Sultan, who ruled from 1782 to 1799. Mysore controlled the profitable trade for Malabar coast, where the company purchased pepper and cardamom. In 1785, Tipu Sultan stopped the export of sandalwood, pepper and cardamom through the ports of his kingdom, and this allowed local merchants from the trading within the company. He also established a close relationship with the French and modernized his army with their help. British were furious. They saw Hyder and Tipu as ambitious, arrogant, and dangerous rulers who had to be controlled and crushed. Both wars were fought with Mysore. 1767 to 69, 1780 to 84, 1790 to 92, and 1799. Only in the Battle of Seringapatam did the company ultimately win with a victory. Tipu Sultan was killed defending his capital Seringapatam. Mysore was placed over a former ruling dynasty of Warders, and subsidiary alliance was imposed on the state. From the late 18th century, the company also sought to curb and eventually destroy Maratha power. With their defeat in the Third Battle of Panipat in 1761, the Marathas' dream of ruling Delhi was shattered. They were divided into many states under different chief sardars belonging to different dynasties such as Scindia, Holkar, Gaikwad, and Bhosle. These chiefs were held together in confederacy under a Peshwa who became its effective military and administrative head based in Pune. Mahatmaji Scindia and Nana Fadnavis were two famous Maratha soldiers and statesmen of the late 18th century. The Marathas were subdued in a series of wars. In the first war that was ended in 1782 with the Treaty of Salwai, there was no clear victor. The Second Anglo-Maratha War, which was fought on different fronts, resulting in British gaining the Odisha and the territories north of the Yamuna River, including Agra and Delhi. And finally, the Third Anglo-Maratha War of 1817 to 1890 crushed the Maratha power. The Peshwa was removed and sent away to Bethune near Kanpur with a pension. The company now had complete control over the territory south of the Vindhyas. It is clear from the work that from the early 19th century, the company pursued an aggressive policy of territorial expansion. Under Lord Hastings, a new policy of paramountcy was initiated. Now the company claimed that its authority was paramount and supreme, hence its power was greater than that of Indian state. In order to protect interests, it's justified in annexing or threatening the any kingdom. This view continued to guide later British policies as well. The process, however, did not go unchallenged. For example, when the British tried to annex the small state of Kittur, Rani Channamma took two arms and led an anti-British British resistance movement. She was arrested in 1824 and imprisoned in 1829. But Rayana, a poor Chokidar of Sangoli in Kittur, carried on the resistance with the popular support. He he destroyed many British camps and records. He was caught and hanged by the British in 1830. You will read more about several cases of resistance later in the book. In the late 1830s, the East India Company became worried about Russia. It imagined that Russia might expand across Asia and enter India from the northwest. Driven by its fear, the British now wanted to secure their control over northwest. They fought prolonged war with Afghanistan between 1838 to 1842 and established indirect company rule there. Sindh was taken over in 1843. Next line was Punjab, but presence of Maharaja Ranjit held back the company. After his death in 1839, the two prolonged wars were fought with the Sikh kingdom. Ultimately, in 1849, the Punjab was annexed. The final wave of annexation occurred under Lord Dalhousie. Lord Dalhousie, who was the Governor-General from 1847 to 1856, he devised a policy that came to be known as Doctrine of Lapse. The doctrine declared that if an Indian ruler died without a male, his kingdom would lapse. That is, become part of company's territory. One kingdom after another was annexed simply by applying this doctrine. Satara in 1848, Sambalpur in 1850, Udaipur in 1852, Nagpur in 1853, and lastly Jhansi in 1854. And you might also have seen the movie of Jhansi in the movie Manikarnika. And finally, in 1856, the company also took over Awadh. This time, the British had an added argument. They said they were obliged by duty. They have to take over Awadh in order to free people from the misgovernment of the Nawab, engaged by the humiliating way in which the Nawab was deposed. The people of Awadh joined the Great Revolt that broke out in 1857. Warren Hastings, Governor-General from 1772 to 1785, was one of the many important figures who played a significant role in the expansion of company's power. By his time, the company had acquired power not only in the Bengal but also in Bombay and Madras. British territories were broadly divided into administrative units called presidencies. These were the three presidencies: Bengal, Madras and Bombay. Each was ruled by a government. The supreme head of the administration was the Governor-General. Warren Hastings was the first Governor-General, introduced several administrative reforms, notably in the sphere of justice. From 1772, a new system of justice was established. Each district had two courts, a criminal court and a civil court, or we can say Faujdari Adalat and Diwani Adalat respectively. Maulvis and Hindu Pandits interpreted India's laws for the European district collectors who presided over civil courts. The criminal court was still under Qazi Mufti but under supervision of the collectors. A major problem was that the Brahman Pandit gave different interpretation of the local laws based on the different schools of the Dharmashastra, Dharmashastra to bring about uniformity. In 1775, 11 Pandits were asked to compile a digest of Hindu laws. NB had translated this digest into English. By 1778, a code of Muslim laws was also compiled for the benefit of the European judges. Under the Regulation Act of 1773, a new Supreme Court was established while the Court of Appeal, the Sardar Nizamat Adalat, was set up at Calcutta, or we can say Kolkata. The principal figure in the Indian district was the collector. As the title suggests, his main job was to collect revenue and taxes and maintain law order in his district with the help of judges, police officers and darogas. His office, the collectorate, became the new center of power and patronage that steadily replaced previous holders of authority. A change occurred in the 18th century when the Mughal successor states like Awadh and Benares started recruiting peasants into their armies and training them as professional soldiers. The East India Company adopted the same method when it began recruitment for its own army, which came Sepoy army from the Indian word Sipahi, meaning soldier. As welfare technology changed from the 1820s, the cavalry requirements of the company's army declined. This is because the British Empire was fighting in the armed with muskets and matchlocks. The soldiers of the company's army had to keep pace with changing military requirements, and its infantry requirements now became more important. In the early 19th century, the British began to develop a uniform military culture. The soldiers were increasingly subjected to the European-style training, drill and discipline that regulated their life far more than before. Often this created problems since caste and community feelings were ignored in building a force of professional soldiers. Could individuals so easily give their caste and religious feelings? Could they see themselves only as soldiers, as not members of communities? What did sepoys feel? How did they react to the changes in their lives and their identity? That is, their sense of who they were. The revolt of 1857 gives us a glimpse into the world of the sepoy. You will read about the revolt in the chapter number 5. Thus, the East India Company was transformed from a trading company to a terrestrial colonial power. The arrival of new steam technology in the early 19th century also did this process. Till then, it would take between 6 to 8 months to travel to India by sea. Steam ship reduced the journey time to 3 weeks, enabling more Britishers and their families to come far off country like India. By 1857, the company came to exercise direct to over about 63% of the territory and 78% of the population of Indian subcontinent. Combined with its indirect influence on the remaining territory and population of the country, the East India Company had virtually the whole India under its control. Thank you. Now just scroll down a little bit and turn that red subscribe button grey. And before doing anything else, just click on that gray or black like button and turn it to really quick, and because it motivates and helps me to create such content videos for you as soon as these things take a lot of time to make. And bye bye, I will see you in my next video. Until then, take care, stay safe, and wear a mask and use sanitizer. Bye bye.